Hello everybody, it's me again, Whirlwing Boom, coming to your screen with another video to make a night you will never forget. On your quest to dominate the world of video games, you would gladly eliminate any enemy that stands in your way. Eerie music and a tense atmosphere can unease you, but what gives you an overwhelming sense of fear is when you are faced with an enemy that cannot be killed. It wouldn't even matter if you had weapons to attack with, since they would soak it all up like a sponge in a pool party. What's even worse is when you have absolutely nothing to defend yourself with. You really can't do anything against them, and your only option is to run away. You could temporarily lose them by hiding, but even then, hiding doesn't always work. You're scared for your life as you know they are right behind you. You panic as you feel them breathing down your neck. You hold your breath, praying to God that they won't find you. Even looking at them is enough to make the most steel-nerved of people tremble. You must do anything and everything you can to keep yourself out of their grasp. It's the feeling of sheer hopelessness that brings the ambience of horror at its finest. You've finished many stories and gained much experience, but are you strong enough to face your greatest fears? Get ready to meet the most terrifying enemies you will ever meet. This is the top 10 pursuer enemies in video games. Do you trust barbers and hairdressers well enough? Well, they aren't the only people coming at you with scissors. Scissor Man, Clock Tower. At the time of development, the idea of a person using a giant pair of garden shears to mutilate his victims was something that had never been done before, so this idea gets some bonus points for originality. This character has had multiple identities throughout the series. The first one was a deformed little boy, another was a perverted research assistant, another was a criminal psychologist obsessed with the case, and finally, the last one turned out to be the long-believed deceased twin of the first one. As soon as you hear that shing 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 in the distance, that's the time to freak out, because he's going to give you more than just a little off the top. As Jennifer Simpson or Helen Maxwell delve deeper into the murder mystery surrounding Barrows Castle, they are constantly stalked by Scissor Man. They can use various places and furnishing to hide from Scissor Man, or can use tools and objects to temporarily incapacitate him. However, you shouldn't make a habit of using the same hiding spaces, because he will wise up and attack wherever it is you're hiding. It's not just the protagonists that are menaced by this childish maniac. He preys upon other characters as well, and uncovering the shocking aftermath of his victims is probably enough to make you go into your own panic mode. The terror of Scissor Man is finally put to an end after obtaining a mystical spell to open an ancient door and having him sucked into hell. Note to self, if a child plays with tools, they are a murderer in the making. Your hair isn't going to be the only thing split when he's through with you. by a close shave, Scissor Man is the number 10 on this list. By the time this goes out, you are going to be afraid of anyone in a suit, and this next one has some business with you. Slender Man. Slender. Originating as an internet meme on a forums page, the Slender Man is a fictional, supernatural character depicted as a tall, thin man with no face, dressed in a tuxedo with long arms and tentacles. Eventually, this entity became so popular, it started to have games inspired by it. As if being trapped in a completely black forest wasn't bad enough, being chased by what lurks within is undeniably frightening. As Kate collects 8 mysterious pages hidden in the forest, the Slender Man is always following her and will become more aggressive with each page collected. It could anticipate her movements and flank her, so he could be waiting for you around the next corner, or even worse, right behind you. As he gets closer to you, your vision will be given a static-like distortion. The music also intensifies with each page collected. There is no chance for escape. He will always get you. It's not a matter of if he catches you, but when. And the only thing more unsettling than the knowledge that he will inevitably catch us is that we get to see what he does to his victims. He has the ability to convert people into proxies, disgusting inhuman puppets to enforce his own will. To think or know that this could and probably will be you. With the constant expectancy of seeing Slender Man, along with the haunting and stressful music, the player is forced to create their own paranoia while playing Slender. Dare you look into the face of evil? Or maybe it doesn't have one. Slender Man dresses for the occasion on being the number 9 on this list. There is always a reason to fear the dead, and if you aren't prepared for this one, then you won't stand a ghost of a chance. Kusabi, Fatal Frame 2, Crimson Butterfly. One of the most powerful spirits throughout the entire series and all of video games, guaranteed to turn your hair as white as his. Once the folklorist known as Seijiro Makabe, this was the unfortunate victim of a cutting sacrifice to appease the darkness from the hellish abyss and to buy time for the Crimson Sacrifice ritual. When the ritual failed, the Kusabi came back from the dead, along with the malicious spirit of Sai Kurosawa, and together unleashed their vengeance upon the villagers who sacrificed them. The village was swallowed by darkness, and the disaster was named the Repentance. As Mio Amakura ventures through All Gods Village to find her twin sister Mayu, she comes across Sai and the Kusabi. He is completely immune to the effects of the camera obscura and will kill you in an instant with one touch. In both gameplay and folklore, he is a Reaper, and you will fear the Reaper. At the final encounter in the underground caverns, the player is allowed to hurt him, and he is fought as the final boss of the game. He can only be harmed by fatal frames and zero shots, but his health is continuously regenerating throughout the battle. After depleting his life, or what's left of it, down to zero, he fades away, at long last passing on to the afterlife. The ending you get is determined by the amount of time it takes for you to defeat him. A Kusabi also appeared in Fatal Frame 3, The Tormented, but it's unknown if the two are the same person. In this game, Mio's uncle, Kei Amakura, finds a Kusabi in the All Gods Village part of the Manor of Sleep. Once again, he is invincible, and we must escape. Whether we gaze upon the Wraith with our own eyes, or through another lens, he will haunt us forevermore. It doesn't take a picture for us to remember this ghost as one of the most terrifying enemies ever, and so awards it the number 8 spot on this list. Robots aren't technically alive, but that doesn't exclude them from being potential mass murderers. E100 Alpha, Zero, Sonic Adventure. One of the earliest models from Dr. Eggman's production line of E-Series robots. Throughout the entirety of Amy Rose's story, this mechanical monstrosity chases her to no end. The robot was programmed to capture the Flicky that Amy was protecting because a Chaos Emerald was contained in its pendant. Though for some unknown reason, it decided to go after Amy as well. All of Amy's stages would involve running away from it and clearing the stage by grabbing onto the balloon at the end. Zero would attack by locking onto you with a reticle laser and launching its retractable fists. It also possessed a jump booster, allowing it to leap over objects and jump to great heights. Amy would be able to knock it over with her hammer, stalling it for a second, but after being hit so many times, it would then become immune to the hammer. Amy would not be able to knock it over anymore at this point, and fleeing was the only solution. Zero would show up at the most unexpected times, crashing through walls and dropping down out of nowhere. If Amy were to hide behind objects or use a barrel, the robot was smart enough to flush her out using electric shockwaves. Zero would finally be dealt with at the end of her story mode. After the Flicky reunites with its family aboard the egg carrier, Zero suddenly appears and attacks the bird. Enraged, Amy engages the robot in a final, and only, boss battle. It was in this battle that its weakness was revealed. It was a poor conductor of electricity. The overload from the electrified fence in the arena caused it to open its head, leaving its central computer exposed. After smashing it numerous times, Amy at long last finally destroys the robot that had been pursuing her. If Eggman had stuck to robots of this type, then he would have an army of invincible robots. Strange that he didn't think about this a little more, even though he has an IQ of 300. Regardless of its numeral order, this Zero is a 7 on this list. Dark corridors with echoes will give you a new fear of hearing your own footsteps, even if they are not necessarily yours. Samus Aran X, Metroid Fusion. Knowing how much of a dangerous killer you are, would you not be afraid if it's yourself you're facing? It was originally a swarm of X-parasites that infected Samus Aran at the start of the game and nearly killed her. Thankfully, she was treated with the Metroid vaccine before it was too late. All of the X in Samus's body had been completely eradicated. However, the parasites that still resided in the suit's organic components had absorbed her DNA and morphed into a perfect copy of her. It's an interesting fact that X parasites mimic whichever life form they infect. The copy broke out of containment and freed X-infected creatures, starting the mass infestation. Samus met her heartless doppelganger aboard the Biologic Space Laboratory's space station. Samus was no match for the copy because of an unseen side effect of the vaccine that rendered her extremely vulnerable to cold, just like a Metroid. And of course, the SA-X was armed with the Ice Beam. Because of this new weakness she inherited from the species, she was forced to hide from it and escape if it found her. The SA-X also seemed to be quite intelligent, as it was able to recognize threats and progress forward if blocked by an obstacle using equipment and weaponry. After recovering almost all of her lost abilities, Samus was given an equal chance to stand against the SA-X in the operations room. After sustaining heavy amounts of damage, it was capable of mutating into a hulking, grotesque creature. It is last seen inexplicably saving Samus from the Omega Metroid and is destabilized by it, allowing for Samus to absorb it and take back all of her powers. Why it did save her is unknown. Either it saw the Omega Metroid as the greater threat, with Metroid being the X-Parasite's natural enemy and attacked purely on instinct, or it saw Samus as a worthy adversary and vowed that if anything was going to kill Samus, it was going to be the one to do so. Whatever the case, the X-Parasite species was wiped out for good. But, since the SA-X was us, relatively speaking, it symbolizes that we ourselves are one danger that we will never escape from. The SA-X casts a deadly reflection from the number 6 spot on this list. In space, no one can hear you scream, no matter how loud. Scream until your lungs are torn if you want, but lungs won't be the only thing ripped apart. Hunter. Dead Space. This specific necromorph was biologically created by Dr. Chalice Mercer to slaughter any humans remaining aboard the USG Ishimura. It was created by inserting a piece of necrotic tissue from the flesh-like growths covering areas of the Ishimura directly into the cranium of a live unknown crew member. It resembles a slasher necromorph, having large blades protruding from arms emerging from the shoulder blades, but it is slightly taller and more muscular than the average slasher. Plus, its original arms are bound inside the flesh on its torso like a straitjacket. As first-class engineer Isaac Clarke entered the chemical lab, he found the creature stored in a cryostasis tube, and upon discovery, was activated by Mercer. It was able to regenerate all of its limbs in mere seconds after having them blasted off, forcing the player to retreat. It pursued Isaac relentlessly throughout the ship by crawling through air ducts. Although it was frozen in a cryogenic tube at one point, we had not seen the last of it. It was clear that it had been thawed out and was once again roaming through the ship as we heard the noises it made in various sections. The hunter was finally killed when Isaac lured it into the path of an experimental shuttle engine and was completely incinerated by the rocket fire. Since all of the hunter's cells were burned simultaneously, it was unable to regenerate itself. Although this enemy had been destroyed, it had left a horrifying influence over the rest of the series in the form of the Ubermorph from Dead Space 2 and the Regenerators from Dead Space 3. The overall message in this is that alien artifacts should be left well enough alone. The next time you board a desolate spaceship, you better hope you won't find something like this. The Hunter takes its prize of being the number 5 spot on this list. Most people nowadays think, what's the point of keeping insane asylums intact? To freak you out beyond belief? That's one possibility. Chris Walker, Outlast. This guy is one of, if not the worst patient that Mount Massive Asylum has ever had within its walls. Walker has superhuman strength, being able to lift a fully grown human with one hand and can easily rip their head from their body. He is also surprisingly athletic for someone of his build, being able to outrun his targets and vault over objects without losing speed. He has no nose or skin on his forehead because, guess what? He inflicted these injuries upon himself because he believed it would give him truer vision. Religious much? It's plain as day that he is clearly insane. As too nosy for his own good reporter Miles Upshur breaks into the asylum, he quickly encounters this brute, killing everyone he comes across, inmates and guards alike. Walker then begins his hunt for Miles, tailing him continuously throughout the asylum. Despite his disfigured appearance, behind this psychotic giant lies a more tragic character. One confusing thing about this guy is that he actually believes he's doing good because of his self-assigned mission to kill any worthy humans for the Wall Rider to possess and keep it in containment. From his career as a policeman in the US military, he retains procedures about security protocol. He claims he's only trying to help, but how he goes around helping people is far from good. After being encountered one last time in the underground laboratory, he is murdered by the Wall Rider, who proceeds to beat him mercilessly and then fly his huge body through a tiny enclosed air gate, shredding him up completely and thus killing him. He also briefly appears in the Whistleblower DLC, where he stalks IT technician Waylon Park through the prison block. After Park escapes from him by diving out a window, he is not seen again afterwards. There is a lesson to this, people. Don't ever go into asylums. Chris Walker walks into the number 4 spot on this list.
You were here, weren't you? You pig. I'll find all yours.
The witty irony of how one common measly enemy we could easily dispatch can become our greatest nightmare when the guns are taken away can really leave a mark on your psyche. The Xenomorph, Alien Isolation. Even though there is just one alien, it gives no assurance in any way that you have nothing to worry about. This extraterrestrial predator leaves a massacre in its wake. The experience from playing this game gives us the feeling of being directly involved back in the first movie. As Amanda Ripley investigates the disappearance of her mother, Ellen Ripley, her search for the Nostromo leads her to the decommissioned space station, Sevastopol, where she is unaware that a drone had unintentionally been brought aboard. After the alien kills Axel, it can appear anywhere, at any time, dropping from vents to begin hunting the player. As you advance in the story, the alien's appearance rate increases. If any noise is made, it will rapidly proceed to the location and investigate to find what made the noise. Sounds made by characters in the game will also attract the alien. Its aggression can slightly be used to the player's advantage by luring the alien to an enemy human's position. It will swiftly kill them and then resume searching for the player. However, it will not attack the synthetic working Joes and vice versa. What sets this enemy apart from the rest is that its AI grows more and more intelligent as time goes on, and consequently becoming all the more dangerous. It will learn from everything you do and will be able to predict your behavior. It is susceptible to fire, so using environmental fire hazards or the flamethrower weapon will cause it to flee. However, as with all the player's actions, it will learn and become less wary of the flamethrower the more it is used. The drone was finally killed when it was ejected from the space station inside a module along with Ripley. She escaped via an airlock, and the alien was incinerated when the module entered KG-348's atmosphere. Unfortunately, the chaos it left behind would take the crisis to the next level, and the struggle for survival would last a little while longer. This one alien may be a regular enemy compared to everything else we've been through, but it is one pursuer we will never be able to forget. The Xenomorph drops into the number 3 spot on this list. Death will eventually come for us all one day. We can't escape our fate, but that doesn't mean to say that we sure aren't going to try. The Dahaka, Prince of Persia, Warrior Within. The fact that we're simply looking at it instantly tells us we're screwed. The Dahaka is described as the physical manifestation of the inevitability of fate. It is a guardian of time and an aspect of death that relentlessly shadows the prince, trying to kill him for his disruption of the timeline. It doesn't even need to be within range to grab you, as it can impale you with its tentacles. Along with immense strength, it possesses great agility, being able to leap across chasms with little to no effort. It is also capable of teleporting short distances during chases. However, with this terrorizing titan being born from sand, it has one weakness: water. The prince will be able to escape from it by crossing bodies of water. On the journey through the Fortress of Time, the Dahaka continuously catches up with the prince, and he must escape from it while passing obstacles and evading traps. If it catches the prince, he is reduced to sand and absorbed. The Dahaka follows the prince in both the present and past to stop him from creating the sands of time, and to erase him after they have been created from his actions. It is fought as the final boss once the prince obtains the Water Sword, the only weapon that can harm and kill the Dahaka. After a grueling showdown against fate itself, the prince thrusts his sword into its skull and it falls into the ocean. The prince had finally freed himself from the deadly Dahaka, and ultimately changed his fate. It's so hard to believe we could actually defy the will of the gods and the law and order of the universe. When our time comes, we just have to hope that this isn't what we face. The sandy beast to the hourglass of fate takes the number 2 spot on this list.
You cannot escape your fate!
Even being in a place as big as a whole city won't be enough to help you evade a monster that is after you.
Stars.
Nemesis T-Type, Resident Evil 3. Add a Nemesis Alpha Parasite to a T-103 Tyrant, and this is what you get. An unstoppable tank of destruction. It was created and deployed by Umbrella to hunt down and eliminate any remaining members of STARS to prevent them from exposing the truth on Umbrella's guilty crimes. If he finds any other survivors who are not his initial targets, he will happily oblige to slaughter anyone unfortunate enough to cross paths with him. When it first appears, it brutally murders poor Brad Vickers as we look on in horror. And since Jill Valentine is ex-STARS, yep, the monster is now after you! As Jill desperately looks for a way out of Raccoon City, she is constantly chased by the Nemesis, each time barely escaping with her life. And no matter what happens to it, the Nemesis will just keep on rising and coming after you again and again and again. There is literally no stopping this trench-coated behemoth. Its vast bioprogramming also allows it to utilize heavy weaponry like rocket launchers and miniguns. Its power limiter coat is burned off halfway through the game, and this triggers a second mutation, becoming bare-chested with a mass of tentacles erupting from its body. At the final encounter, it has become a writhing pound of flesh, having survived being submerged in the dead factory's dissolving pool. It consumes a nearby tyrant and undergoes a final metamorphosis. From the usage of a rail cannon, the Nemesis is left mortally wounded. Jill takes this opportunity to finally be rid of the monster once and for all by grabbing a nearby Magnum and unloading into it. A few shudders later, the Nemesis at long last meets its end, dissolving into nothing. It also appears in multiple spin-offs: Survivor 2, The Umbrella Chronicles, and Operation Raccoon City. To this day, we recognize this old foe as an all-time digital nightmare. Because of its endurance, stamina, abilities, and not to mention persistence, it is without a doubt one of the most powerful bioweapons in the Resident Evil franchise, and has proven itself to be the ultimate chaser. The Nemesis is crowned the #1 pursuer enemy in video games. And so, this list has finally come to an end. I trust you were entertained with this list. Are there any horrors you did not witness? Which creature of death petrified you the most? Feel free to submit which enemies from which games in the comment section below. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe to my channel if you wish to see more, and I shall be expecting you again next time. Until then, don't let these guys keep you up at night. This is your host, Whirlwing Boom, twisting out.